Okay. Okay. Right there. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is the first video of Chapter 7 lecture about leisure geography. And as always, it's me, Shin, but also I wanted to acknowledge that part of this lecture and the lecture slides are informed by Dr. Elizabeth Halpenny and our faculty as well. So before talking about getting into leisure geography, let's define what geography is. It's a scientific study of where things are located on Earth's surface. Sometimes it's in the air, sometimes it's underground, and why. It really focuses on the way people respond to the place and how space is shaped by human behaviors. So it's not just about how things are in a spatial way, as in physical, objective manner, but also the interaction between place and people and people's perception of the place as well. Now, probably it's very clear that the relationship between leisure and geography is very clear. When leisure happens, right? When you get a free time and you do something with that free time, activity-wise, that has to happen somewhere, right? You can't do it in a vacuum. You have to do it in a park. You have to do it at the home. You have to do it somewhere. So there's definitely a geographical spatial component to leisure activity and experience. Now the question is, how is it, as in geography, relates to both leisure and happiness? Because happiness is something we are studying in this course. To answer that question, check out this very interesting TED Talk by a scientist engineer called Daniel Corsia. Yeah. So he is on a project to create what they call the happy maps. It's like a Google Maps application that you usually probably use that when you have to drive somewhere or take a bus somewhere. That you put the destination and it will give you the fastest route, basically, right? Now Danielle realized that that's the way that limit the way we experience the space in a town, right? Because it only focuses us on the fastest way, arguably. And Danielle realized the importance of taking some quote-unquote detour, maybe adds a few minutes to your travel, but at the same time, there are pathways that can make you way more, for example, happier, more peaceful, enjoyable your travel experience is. And their team is working on that project, okay? So watch this quick TED Talk, about 7 minutes, and then note how leisure spaces, maybe they're a park, maybe they're a museum, maybe they're a church, maybe those things are part of Danielle's happiest pathways in their project. Also consider how this TED Talk topic applies to your life, right? Ask yourself and maybe do some research and brainstorming about if you can make your commute route more enjoyable. As in, maybe, well, now you're not probably coming to the campus, but if you were to come to campus, what's the route you would take usually, right? Probably that's the fastest route. Well, can you make in such a way that it's more maybe, you're experiencing more nature or fun or whatever that might be? What about your way to your part-time job? Can you make it more enjoyable? Okay, so hopefully this video will clarify the relationship between leisure, geography, and happiness. So this is the overview of Chapter 7. We will focus on the 3 main topics: leisure as a space, leisure as a place, and environmental impact of different types of leisure activities. You may be wondering, okay, what's the distinction between space and a place, right? The chapter kind of alluded to that. Traditionally, in our field, the leisure studies, we consider that the space is a physical, very objective, geometric thing, triangle, square, those things, and in square meters maybe, and there's object in it, that type of thing, the tangible space, that's a space. Now, place is more subjective and based on a human perception. Okay, so there is this, for example, my office, which is like, rectangular shape, there's a one window and all that kind of stuff. That's a space. But then, we create memories in it. Maybe I spent a lot of time in here. So, it's associated with the hard work, I guess, to me too. Actually, this office belonged to my previous supervisor. So I experienced this place as a student as well, to an extent. So those memories and emotional attachment makes this space, physical space, more meaningful, right, to human beings. And that's when that happens, that's a place. That's traditionally how we distinguish them. Now, textbook also recognize that that's not necessarily the way we conceptualize space and place in different fields. For example, in geography, and especially something called human geography and humanistic geography, there was a very famous scholar called F20 Ch7. He was, I think, a Chinese American, and he sort of mixed emotional aspect of the geography and philosophy, religion. He mixed all those things, and he's known as a very creative, influential scholar. To him, though, both space and place are related to emotion, human emotions. And space represented more freedom, and place represented more of our security, sense of security. So that was a distinction. I'm not going to ask about this distinction probably in a quiz or an exam, but this is how we tend to conceptualize. Now, leisure as space. So we're talking more about physical, space. As we just discussed, leisure is almost inherently, by definition, spatial. Like it's related to space. It has to happen somewhere. It takes up space. Well, what kind of space does it take up? A good example could be a national park, those things. That's space, natural area. According to Parks Canada, as of 2019, there were 38 national parks, 10 national park reserves, and 1 national urban park, covering an area of approximately 328,198 square kilometers, or about 3.3% of the total land of Canada. Alberta actually has quite a bit of national parks in our province, as well as space-wise too. So I would say this is quite a bit of praise, because Canada is one of the biggest countries in the world, space-wise, right? And national parks and those spaces are considered leisure spaces, mostly, take up 3.3% of it, not to mention many other leisure-related spaces as well. So in those leisure space, there are so many important phenomena happen, and some of them are not necessarily positive, right? And one of the most extensively studied phenomena is called crowding. It's a subjective and a negative judgment about the number of objects, mostly people, in a given space. You feel the place is crowded, basically. It's that simple. But the question is when and how people feel certain place is crowded, right? Space is crowded. Now, give you an example. This is Mount Fuji, the tallest mountain in Japan. Very rectangular, beautiful shape. People love it watching. It's not that difficult to climb it up to the top. I did it myself too. It's somewhere around 3,700 meters tall, so it's not that high. Yeah, so you can do day trip, really easy. And you can take a bus to the 50% of the pathway, and from there you can hike, basically. Now, this picture is very different. It's very close to the same mountain, Mount Fuji, very close to the top. What's happening is that there are 5 or 6 routes. right? Entry points from different directions, and they meet eventually. So a lot of people get together toward the end, and especially so around the time of sunrise, because people want to see sunrise from the top of the mountain, right? They time in such a way so that at the same time people basically eventually get together at close to the top. And I experienced this literally, and I was so surprised because I mean, from farther away, we can't see these people. And all of a sudden I see these people, and it's literally human traffic jam. And this was negative, obviously. To me, it was very, very crowded. It's too much. And it was almost a bit of unsafe for some people as well. Crowding happens a lot. There are many examples. For example, traffic congestions. This is not just a human traffic, traffic jam, but literally cars, on the right side of the picture, you can see. Cramped campgrounds, like left side. How many times, if you go camping, sometimes we see those things, tent and tent are kind of next to each other. We thought that we kind of escaped their, urban life, the city life, to get, somehow free and alone. And then now you have to camp in those campgrounds with each other, then that's a really not good experience probably, right? Long line for tickets or restaurants or whatever, stricter rules, because there are so many people. The authorities have to make more stricter regulations around that. Degraded facility, people started to trash, damage the bathroom, for example. Higher maintenance fee because there's more damage, there's more fee for the users. And conflicts among visitors, because if you have many people, and especially frustrated people, there's gonna be some conflict. What I want to, and what the chapter wants to emphasize, is that the crowding is a value judgment. It's a subjective thing. It's very also situational. Even with the same number of people, right, and the same amount of space available, some situations are considered to be crowded while others are not. And also depending on, maybe I would consider a certain situation crowding, and you may not. So depending on our people as well. For example, in this picture, maybe you're in some magnificent national park, and there's this nice vista point where you can see their, almost 180-degree panorama view of their nature. And there's a little cliff. That's the best spot to watch that, appreciate that. Now we have 4 people on it, right? 2 females, younger female probably, maybe they're friends, I don't know, and a couple, older couple. 4 people on this spot. I would personally consider this is already crowded. I'm not gonna go there because the space is limited. For that, 4 people is pretty a lot. And especially I want to take a moment to myself and maybe my group, whoever you're going with, and just appreciate this nature alone, as alone as possible, basically. So for other people, it's a bit too much for me, right? I would probably wait, and after they leave, I would probably go up. So it really depends. It's just the 4 people can cause the perception of crowding as well. However, although it's subjective, it's also systematic process, and there are factors that we know based on research that influence perceived crowding. One of the first kind is characteristics of the visitors themselves. For example, if I go to camping, right, then my characteristic, one of those characteristics is motivation. The reason why I go to those camping and hiking. Well, if I'm motivated to escape from people, I'm sick of the people in Edmonton and I want to just get away. Now that makes me more vulnerable, more likely to perceive crowding, because I wanted to get away from people and I see a little bit of people and I feel like, oh, this is crowded, right? Second factor is this, characteristics of other people that we encounter. So again, me going for hiking, the people I meet, encounter, other people, right? So let's say I'm a canoeist. I want to go to the lake. I want to enjoy canoe and maybe nice, canoe trip. If I meet someone like a motorboat user, like that could lead to more perceived crowding because we represent canoeists and motorboat user represent very different type of behavior, preferences, even values. In terms of behavior, I mean, we're doing different activity, right? And more importantly, probably I'm enjoying this nice, peaceful time. Canoe is quiet usually, right? Maybe you can have a conversation with, someone you're going with. You're just enjoying the nature very, very peacefully. As opposed to motorboat users, whoa, 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 boom, that a lot of splash, a lot of noise, maybe shouting, right? They're very different preferences. They're very different behaviors. And oftentimes, activities such as canoe tends to relate to environmentally friendly, basically environmentalist values that they care about their nature. Motorboat, as we talk about later, it tends to damage water pollution, water quality. So users tend not to care about that so much. So there are actually value conflict as well. And these differences would make you or either party feel more crowded rather than canoeists meeting other canoeists. Now, third, the nature of outdoor setting, the characteristic of the space, right? For example, if I am in RV recreation vehicle campground, it's kind of like a parking lot in a way, right? In the nature, and there's a lot of cars, maybe some people even watching TV. There's a lot of people. So I would less likely to feel crowded because I would expect to meet a fair amount of people. Now, if I'm in the back countryside, which is like in the nature, right? Really deep in the nature, I would more likely to feel crowded if I see just a small number of people as well, because I don't expect to see many. Research also suggests that more trashed space, basically damaged, not looking good space, will likely to be perceived as crowded as well. Okay, so if it's dirty, it tends to be correlated with their crowding perception. So these are the three factors we know. I'm going to stop here, and I will see you in a second video.